I never thought betrayal could slice through me so suddenly. But that night, I opened a door, and my entire world shattered. It was late, past midnight, when I returned from a church charity event in Charlotte, North Carolina. The house was supposed to be quiet. My husband, Richard, usually fell asleep in his recliner by 10. My son's fiancée, Madison, had claimed she wasn't feeling well and skipped the dinner altogether. But as I walked down the hall, I heard something. Laughter. A hushed whisper. A sound no wife should ever hear. My hand trembled as I pushed the bedroom door open. And there they were. Richard, my husband of 35 years, and Madison, the young woman set to marry my son in 3 weeks. Her hand was on his chest, his shirt was unbuttoned, their faces far too close. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred. My chest burned like fire. I had trusted them, both of them, and in a single glance that trust was obliterated. "Richard!" My voice cracked. They froze, like children caught in the act. Madison pulled away, her face flushed but not with shame. No, there was something else in her eyes. Calculation. Richard stammered, "Evelyn, it's not what it looks like." But it was exactly what it looked like, and worse, because in that moment, something inside me knew. Madison wasn't just after my son. She was after everything. And I had no idea just how far she was willing to go. If you were in my shoes that night, what would you have done? Tell me in the comments. And before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe, because this story doesn't just end with betrayal. Where are you watching from right now, and what time is it? Let me know below. The next morning, the smell of coffee drifted through the kitchen, but the house felt like a stranger's. Richard sat at the table, newspaper spread wide, pretending nothing had happened. Madison was there too, pouring orange juice into my son Ethan's glass, like she belonged. I stood in the doorway, my pulse hammering. How could she smile so easily after what I had seen? Ethan grinned up at her, completely unaware. "Thanks, babe. You didn't have to get up this early." Madison's laugh rang sweet, polished, practiced. "Of course I did. You've got that big meeting today. You need your energy." Her hand lingered on his shoulder a second too long. She caught my eyes over his head, and there it was again. That look. A smirk hidden behind innocence. A silent message. "You can't stop me." Richard shifted uncomfortably, finally lowering his paper. He didn't meet my eyes. He didn't defend me. He didn't explain. The man I had shared a life with, the father of my children, sat in silence while Madison played the perfect fiancé. My hands curled into fists. I wanted to scream, to throw the truth on the table and shatter their little performance. But Ethan, my sweet, trusting Ethan, he looked so happy. If I spoke then, I wouldn't just destroy Madison, I'd destroy him. So I swallowed the truth like poison, but poison spreads. And I could already feel it seeping into every corner of my home. Have you ever kept quiet to protect someone you love, even when it ripped you apart inside? Drop a yes in the comments if you understand Evelyn's choice, or tell me if you'd have exposed Madison right there at the table. Days passed, but the image of Richard and Madison together haunted me like a ghost. I replayed it every time she smiled across the dinner table, every time Richard avoided my eyes, every time Ethan held her hand as if she were made of glass. But soon, little things began to change. Richard had always left his phone charging on the counter. Now it never left his pocket. He jumped at every buzz, silencing it quickly. Madison began moving things around the house. My house. She swapped my grandmother's china for new plates she thought felt fresher. She reorganized the pantry, claiming Ethan liked things a certain way. She even replaced the framed photo of our family trip to Yellowstone with a picture of her and Ethan on some beach getaway. It wasn't just decorating, it was erasing. Then came the financial suggestions. At dinner one night, Madison leaned forward, her voice dripping with sweetness. "Richard, Ethan, don't you think it's time we updated the family trust? Just to make sure everyone's taken care of? I mean, life is unpredictable." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. She said it so casually, as if it were just a passing thought. But her eyes flicked toward me for only a second, and I understood. She wasn't satisfied with Richard's attention. She wanted everything. That night, as I lay awake, I realized something chilling. I wasn't just fighting for my marriage. I was fighting for my entire life as I knew it. I couldn't keep it bottled inside anymore. The walls of my own house felt like they were closing in on me. So I called the one person I thought would listen. My sister, Denise, who lived just outside Raleigh, North Carolina. We sat across from each other at a little cafe. I told her everything. The night I caught Richard and Madison. The way Madison had started moving things, changing things. The way she had slipped family trust into conversation like it was nothing. Denise stirred her coffee slowly, her eyes skeptical. "Evelyn, are you sure you're not just imagining the worst? You've been under a lot of stress since Richard's heart scare. Maybe you're reading too much into it." I slammed my hand on the table before I realized it. Heads turned. My voice shook. "I saw them, Denise. I saw them. How could I imagine that?" She lowered her voice, leaning in. "All right, but Madison's young. Maybe she was just being affectionate. And Richard, well, men do stupid things. That doesn't mean she's plotting to take over your whole life." Her words cut deeper than she knew. Because that's exactly what it felt like. When I got back home that evening, Madison was already there, standing at the kitchen island with a glass of wine, chatting with Richard as if she'd always been part of the family. Her eyes found mine. She smiled, not the warm smile she showed Ethan, not the polite one she wore for guests. This one was sharp, knowing. As if she could sense I'd tried to fight back. As if she was daring me to try again. And in that moment, I realized something chilling. I was alone. No one would believe me. If I wanted to protect Ethan, if I wanted to save what was left of my life, I'd have to gather proof on my own. I started small. If no one else was going to believe me, I needed something they couldn't ignore, something Madison couldn't smile her way out of. It was a Thursday afternoon when Madison came by the house while Ethan was still at work. I pretended to be napping, but instead, I watched from the upstairs hallway as she moved through the living room. She wasn't just visiting. She was searching. Her hands slid through Richard's desk drawers, lingering over envelopes, flipping through papers. She even pulled out the small metal cash box Richard always kept locked. Somehow, she had the key. My chest tightened. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't scared. She was calm, methodical, like she had done this before. When the sound of Ethan's car door slammed outside, Madison closed everything quickly, smoothed her hair in the hall mirror, and greeted him at the door like the perfect fiancé. I waited until they left for dinner that evening, then rushed downstairs. My hands shook as I pulled open the drawer she had gone through. Most of it looked untouched, but tucked between two folders was something I had never seen before. A small receipt, folded neatly. From a hotel in Atlanta, Georgia. 2 nights, paid in cash. And the date? The exact weekend Richard had told me he was away on a business trip. I felt the air leave my lungs. My hands trembled so badly I almost dropped it. It was true. It wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just my imagination. Richard and Madison had been together, away from us, living a double life. But why had Madison kept the receipt? And why hide it in Richard's desk, almost as if she wanted me to find it? I tucked it back carefully, my mind spinning. This wasn't just an affair. It was something darker, something planned. I barely slept after finding that receipt. My mind kept replaying the dates, the lies, the way Richard had looked me straight in the eye that weekend. and kissed me goodbye before leaving for work. I needed more than scraps of paper. I needed to see with my own eyes. The next week, I followed Madison. Not directly. I wasn't reckless enough for that. I parked a few cars behind her at the strip mall outside of town and pretended to be on my phone whenever she glanced in the mirror. She didn't notice me. She was too focused. Instead of heading to Ethan's office, or even wedding planning like she told him, Madison pulled into a quiet diner just outside Birmingham, Alabama. I waited, heart pounding, as she slid into a booth. Then my stomach turned. Richard was already there, and he wasn't sitting across from her like some guilty husband meeting his secret lover. No, he was beside her, their bodies pressed close, whispering, laughing. Richard reached over, tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. I wanted to storm inside, to scream, to end it. But before I could even reach for my door handle, something froze me. A third person joined them, a man in a dark suit carrying a leather briefcase. He slid it across the table. Madison opened it for only a second, but it was enough. Even from the parking lot, I recognized the thick stacks of cash. My throat went dry. This wasn't just an affair. This was business. And whatever they were involved in, it was big. As the man stood to leave, Madison smiled. But it wasn't the smile she showed Ethan or the sweet, polite face she wore at family dinners. It was cold, sharp. A smile that told me I wasn't dealing with an ordinary young woman. I sank lower into my seat, afraid they'd see me. For the first time, it hit me. Madison wasn't just stealing my son's future. She was pulling my entire family into something dangerous. And Richard, he wasn't a victim of her charm. He was in on it. I couldn't breathe. That night, I sat in my car for nearly an hour, staring at the empty diner parking lot long after Madison and Richard had driven away together. My chest was tight, my hands clammy, but my mind sharper than it had ever been. I knew what I had seen. Madison wasn't just betraying Ethan. She wasn't just sneaking around with Richard. She was working some kind of scheme, and Richard was her partner. But why Madison? Why my son's bride-to-be? The next morning, I drove to the courthouse in Jefferson County, Alabama. If there was dirt on Madison, I was going to find it. And I did. Her name wasn't clean. She had changed her last name 3 years ago. Before that, she was Madison Cole, arrested twice in Florida for fraud, though charges were mysteriously dropped. I sat there in the records office, my stomach sinking. This wasn't a woman planning to start a family with Ethan. She was a woman running from a past and using my family as her new cover. But that wasn't the worst part. When I returned home, Ethan was in the kitchen, excited, grinning, waving a manila envelope. "Mom, you won't believe this. Madison's cousin is investing in my startup. I finally have the funding I've been praying for." He opened the envelope. Stacks of cash. Tens of thousands of dollars. My blood ran cold. The same money I saw passed across the table at the diner. Land Madison? She stood in the doorway, her hand on Ethan's shoulder, her smile wide and sweet. But this time, I saw through it. That smile wasn't for him. It was for me. Like she knew I had discovered too much, and she was daring me to stop her. I couldn't hold it in any longer. The courthouse files, the cash, Madison's smile that told me she wasn't afraid of being caught. She was daring me. That night, when Ethan left to meet friends, I cornered Richard in the living room. He was sipping his usual bourbon, half watching the evening news, when I turned off the TV. "We need to talk," I said, my voice shaking. He sighed, like I was just nagging him again. "Evelyn, not this—" "Don't lie to me," I snapped. "I followed you. I saw you with Madison at that diner. I saw the money, and I know about her past in Florida." His glass froze halfway to his lips. For a second, I thought I had him. That guilt would break through. But instead, he laughed. A low, bitter laugh that sent chills crawling down my spine. You think you're so smart, Evelyn. You think you've caught us in some little affair. Isn't that what it is? I demanded, though a part of me already knew it was something worse. He leaned forward, his eyes sharp, voice cold. Madison and I? We're not what you think. We're business partners. And if you were half as sharp as you claim to be, you'd thank me. Thank you? For betraying your son? For crawling into bed with his fiancée? His jaw tightened, but he didn't flinch. Instead, he said words that nearly knocked the air from my lungs. Ethan doesn't understand the world the way I do. Madison and I, we're protecting him, keeping him safe from things you couldn't even begin to handle. I stared at him, horrified. Safe? By dragging him into criminal schemes? By handing him dirty money? Richard slammed his glass down, shards of amber liquid splashing across the coffee table. You think you know Madison, but you don't. She's dangerous, Evelyn. More dangerous than you realize. And if you keep pushing her, you'll put all of us in the ground. My stomach twisted. Was this a threat or a warning? He stood, towering over me now, his face hard and unreadable. Drop it. Stay out of this, or you won't like what happens next. And then he walked out, leaving me with a single truth. Richard wasn't Madison's victim. He wasn't even her lover. He was her accomplice. And he had just chosen her over his own family. After Richard's warning, I didn't sleep for 2 nights. His words kept replaying, "Stay out of this, or you won't like what happens next." I wanted to believe he was just drunk, lashing out. But deep down, I knew he meant it. Richard wasn't just complicit. He was protecting Madison. That terrified me more than anything. I couldn't trust him. And if I told Ethan, I risked destroying him before I had real proof. So, I needed someone outside the family. Someone I could count on. That's when I remembered Detective Carla Ruiz. She wasn't a stranger. She had investigated a burglary. Richard's warning rattled me to my core. He wasn't bluffing. His tone, his eyes, they carried the weight of a man who'd already crossed a line of no return. For the first time in 30 years of marriage, I feared him. I couldn't confide in Ethan. Not yet. He was in too deep with Madison, blinded by the illusion of love. If I forced him to choose sides now, I'd lose him completely. But I couldn't do nothing, not when I knew something darker was unfolding beneath the surface. That's when her name came back to me. Detective Carla Ruiz. She wasn't a stranger. 3 years earlier, when a rash of burglaries hit our neighborhood in Charlotte, North Carolina, she had been the lead investigator. I remembered her sharp instincts, her calm presence, and the way she listened without judgment. Unlike Richard, she'd taken me seriously when I reported a suspicious man outside our house. I still had her card tucked away in an old drawer. That morning, while Richard left for meetings and Ethan was at Madison's, I dialed the number. "Detective Ruiz?" Her voice crackled on the other end. "It's Evelyn Parker," I whispered, glancing over my shoulder even though I was alone. I think my family is in danger." There was a pause, heavy but not dismissive. "Tell me everything." And so, for the next 20 minutes, I poured it all out. Richard's secret meetings with Madison, the envelopes of cash, her sudden wealth despite no real job, the courthouse files, and Richard's chilling warning. Carla didn't interrupt. When I finally stopped, my voice shaking, she said something that sent a chill racing down my spine. "You're not the first person to call me about Madison Brooks." I froze. "What do you mean?" Carla's tone lowered, confidential but firm. "She's been on our radar for months. We suspect she's connected to a string of financial fraud cases across 3 states: Raleigh, Charleston, even Atlanta. The problem is, she's careful. She uses people close to her as shields." My stomach knotted. Shields. That's exactly what Richard had become. "Evelyn," Carla continued, "if you're right about your husband being involved, you're standing on a live wire. Whatever you do, Don't confront them again. Let me dig." I wanted to obey, but something in me already knew. If Carla was right, Madison wasn't just after money. She was after power, and she was using my family to get it. Before we hung up, Carla gave me one final instruction. "Keep your eyes open, and if you notice anything unusual in their behavior, call me immediately, no matter the hour." As I slipped her card back into my drawer, a thought hit me hard. Madison wasn't just going to ruin Ethan's life. She was going to destroy all of us. And Richard was helping her do it. 2 days passed. Every moment felt like I was walking on glass. Richard moved around the house like nothing was wrong, sipping his bourbon, scrolling through his phone, pretending we were still a normal couple. Madison still came around, flashing that perfect smile, her laughter echoing through my kitchen like she already owned it. But I wasn't fooled anymore. I waited, watched, and prayed Carla would find something. Then, late one evening, my phone buzzed. It was Carla. "Evelyn, I need you to listen carefully. I pulled some files from our fraud division. Madison Brooks isn't who she says she is." My heart stuttered. "What do you mean?" "She's been living under that name for the last 3 years. But before that, she went by Haley Monroe. Same face, same birth date. And under that identity, she was tied to a suspicious death in Charleston." I nearly dropped the phone. "A death?" Carla's voice hardened. "A man named Thomas Vickers, 58 years old, a wealthy contractor, found dead in his home after a supposed heart attack. But the investigation flagged unusual bank transfers, money funneled directly to Haley Monroe just weeks before he died. The case was dropped due to lack of evidence, but..." Her pause was enough to chill my blood. "It fits her pattern." I pressed my hand against my chest, my pulse pounding. "And now she's here. With my son. With my husband." "Yes," Carla confirmed. "And if we don't move carefully, she could disappear again. She's slippery, Evelyn, and people tied to her don't just lose money, they lose everything." For a moment, the room spun. Madison, Haley, whoever she really was, wasn't just a manipulator. She was a predator. "Evelyn," Carla's voice cut through my panic. "I need you to stay calm. You're my inside link. Watch her. Document anything unusual. Any threats, any movements, any sudden financial changes. Don't let her suspect you're onto her." I swallowed hard. "And Richard?" Carla hesitated. "If he's protecting her, he's already compromised. You can't trust him. Not anymore." The line went quiet. I stared into the shadows of my living room, the weight of her words pressing down on me. Madison wasn't just lying about her past. She had already left one man dead, and now she was moving on to my family. Carla's warning echoed in my ears. Don't confront her. Don't let her suspect you're onto her. But sitting at the dinner table that Friday night, I couldn't hold it in any longer. Madison sat directly across from me, her fingers laced with Ethan's, her laugh light and practiced. Richard sat at the head of the table, acting like the proud patriarch, pouring wine as if nothing about our lives had shifted. But I knew who she really was, and every time she smiled at my son, I wanted to scream. So instead, I decided to test her. "Madison," I said sweetly, "you mentioned you grew up in Florida, right? Jacksonville, wasn't it?" Her eyes flickered, just for a second. "Yes, that's right." I leaned in, tilting my head. "Funny. I have a cousin in Charleston. She swears she remembers someone with your exact smile. Haley Monroe, I think the name was." The fork froze halfway to her mouth. Ethan looked confused, glancing between us. "Mom, what are you talking about?" Madison recovered quickly, flashing that perfect smile again. "Haley? I'm afraid you've got the wrong person. Never heard of her." Richard cut in, his tone sharp. "Evelyn, drop it." But I didn't. I couldn't. "Really?" I pressed. because my cousin said Haley Monroe was engaged to a man named Thomas, a contractor who died under unusual circumstances. The air in the room thickened. Ethan's face paled, his fork clattering against his plate. Madison, however, didn't flinch. She slowly set her fork down, folded her hands, and looked straight at me. "That's a cruel thing to say at dinner, Evelyn, almost slanderous." Her tone was calm, but her eyes burned with quiet rage. Richard's fist slammed the table, startling Ethan. "Enough! You're ruining this family with your paranoia." But I barely heard him, because in that moment, Madison's lips curved into the faintest smile, a smile that said, "You know. And now I know you know." For the rest of the meal, no one spoke. Forks scraped, glasses clinked, but the silence was suffocating. Ethan excused himself early, clearly shaken. When Madison finally rose to leave, she bent close to me, her whisper venomous. "You're playing a dangerous game, Evelyn. And trust me, games are something I never lose." And then she walked out, leaving me trembling, Richard glaring, and Ethan caught in a storm he couldn't yet understand. After that dinner, the walls of my home no longer felt safe. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow in the hallway. It all felt like Madison's presence, lingering, waiting. And then the accidents started. The first happened 2 mornings later. I was pouring my usual cup of coffee when the pot slipped, scalding liquid splashing across the counter. The glass carafe had cracked clean through, though it had been fine the night before. Richard brushed it off as wear and tear, but I'd bought it only a month earlier. The second was more sinister. I was driving to the grocery store when my brakes squealed. At the shop, the mechanic shook his head. "Someone tampered with the brake lines. You're lucky you caught it when you did." My stomach dropped. Madison's whisper replayed in my head. Games are something I never lose. The third was undeniable. One evening, while folding laundry in the upstairs bedroom, I smelled smoke. Racing downstairs, I found a small towel smoldering in the kitchen, right next to the stove. The burner was on. Richard swore he hadn't touched it. Ethan wasn't even home. But I remembered clearly. I had turned it off. It was deliberate. Every accident carefully designed to look random, but each one carrying the same message: you're not safe. That night, I called Detective Ruiz again, my voice trembling. "She's trying to get rid of me. I know it." Carla's voice hardened. "Evelyn, you need to document everything. Photos, receipts, reports. If she's escalating, we can use this. But you have to keep your composure. Don't let her see fear." I wanted to be strong. But as I hung up the phone, a shiver ran down my spine. Because fear was all I felt. Later, when I walked into the bedroom, I found something waiting for me on my pillow. A single red playing card. The Queen of Hearts. And scrawled across it, in neat, deliberate handwriting, "You're running out of lives." My scream echoed through the house. And Richard? He came running, only to glance at the card and mutter, "Evelyn, maybe you should get some rest. You're imagining things again." That was the moment I knew. I was completely alone inside my own marriage. The card on my pillow haunted me. It wasn't just a warning, it was a declaration. Madison wasn't playing anymore. She was escalating. And Richard? His refusal to believe me wasn't just denial. It was complicity. I couldn't sit back. Not anymore. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed my own husband. One Thursday night, Richard left the house claiming he had a bored dinner. But I knew better. Slipping behind the wheel, I trailed his car across town, keeping 2 cars back. He pulled into the dim parking lot of an old warehouse near the Charlotte rail yards, a place no bored dinner would ever be held. I parked a block away and crept closer, my heart hammering. Through the cracked window of the warehouse office, I saw them. Richard, Madison, and a man I didn't recognize, tall with a sharp suit and an envelope in his hands. I pressed my phone to the glass and hit record. Their voices were muffled, but Madison's laugh cut through like glass. She leaned across the table, her hand brushing Richard's, her words crystal clear. Once Ethan's inheritance clears, we're in the clear. No one will ever trace it back to us. Inheritance. The word hit me like a punch. Ethan's inheritance? He wasn't even married yet. Richard's life insurance policy, our assets, everything we had built. Was Madison planning to funnel it through my son? My breath fogged the glass, and I pulled back before they could see me, but not before catching one last exchange. The man in the suit handed Madison the envelope. She opened it, flipping through stacks of cash. Then, in a voice cold enough to freeze me to the bone, she said, "If Evelyn keeps sniffing around, I'll handle her." Richard didn't protest. He didn't even flinch. He just lowered his head like a man already resigned. I stumbled back into the shadows, my whole body trembling. Madison wasn't just manipulating them. She had Richard wrapped around her finger, and now she was openly plotting my death. When I got back in my car, I dialed Carla Ruiz with shaking hands. "I have proof," I whispered. "I recorded them. She's planning something with my husband, something involving Ethan's inheritance." Carla's voice was urgent, sharper than ever. "Evelyn, listen to me. You need to leave the house. Tonight. Don't let them know you have that recording. If Madison suspects, you won't have time to call me again." I clutched the phone, tears blurring my vision. Leave my home. Leave my son. Leave everything. But deep down, I knew Carla was right. Because Madison wasn't just circling me anymore. She was closing in for the kill. I didn't sleep that night. Carla's words echoed in my head. Leave the house. Tonight. But how do you just leave? How do you walk away from the home you built? From the son you raised? From the life you fought for? I paced the kitchen until dawn, debating every choice. If I ran, Madison would tighten her grip on Ethan. If I stayed, she'd tighten her grip on me. By morning, I had decided I would leave quietly, just long enough to regroup, just long enough to gather proof and return with a plan. I packed a small suitcase, stuffed the recording device deep inside, and slipped out the back door. My car was parked 2 houses down, hidden under the oak trees. I thought I was being clever, careful. But the moment I slid into the driver's seat, I knew. She was already waiting for me. Madison's reflection appeared in the rearview mirror, seated calmly in the back seat of my car, a smirk curling her lips. "Going somewhere, Evelyn?" she purred. My blood turned to ice. My hand froze on the keys. She leaned forward, close enough that I could smell her perfume. Sharp, sweet, suffocating. "You know, it's rude to sneak off without saying goodbye, especially when we've gotten so close." My voice trembled. "Get out of my car." Her laugh was soft, almost pitying. "Oh, Evelyn, you still think you're in control. You think you're leaving on your terms, but you're not going anywhere." She reached forward, her hand grazing the edge of my suitcase. Her eyes flicked to me knowingly. "You've been recording us, haven't you?" My chest constricted. She knew. She knew. Before I could respond, she slid a folded piece of paper onto the dashboard. A plane ticket. "One way, out of Charlotte, in your name, booked last night." My heart nearly stopped. She wasn't guessing. She knew everything. Her smile widened, vicious and triumphant. "You see, Evelyn, I don't need to kill you. Not yet. All I need to do is make sure when the pieces fall, you're gone. Out of the picture. A runaway wife with no credibility." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "And when the time is right, Ethan will sign everything over, to me. And Richard will thank me for making it all so simple." Then she slipped out of the car, her heels clicking softly against the pavement, and walked away, leaving me frozen, suffocating in my own fear. The plane ticket still sat on my dashboard, taunting me. A reminder that Madison wasn't just watching me. She was controlling every move I made. And I realized then, running wasn't an option. If I wanted to survive this, I had to stop her before she stopped me. After Madison's stunt in my car, I sat frozen for hours. My instincts screamed at me to run, to disappear before she tightened the noose around my neck. But then I remembered Ethan, my son, my only child. If I left, Madison would win. She'd sink her claws deeper into him, and I'd be painted as the bitter, paranoid mother who abandoned her family. No one would believe me. Not Ethan, not Richard, not anyone. And that's when I made the most dangerous decision of my life. I wasn't running anymore. I was going to trap Madison. Step 1. Find proof Madison couldn't deny. I called Detective Carla Ruiz from a payphone outside a gas station. My voice shook as I told her everything. The recordings, the threats, the plane ticket. Carla didn't sound surprised. "She's escalated," she said. "That means she's closer to making her final move. If you want to stop her, Evelyn, you're going to need bait." Bait. The word echoed in my head all night. And then it hit me. What if Madison thought she had finally broken me? What if she thought I was surrendering? Step 2. Play the role. I went home and acted defeated. I stopped questioning Madison. I stopped warning Ethan. I stopped pushing Richard. Instead, I smiled through dinners, nodded when Madison spoke, and let her think she was winning. But behind the scenes, I was recording everything. Every phone call, every argument, every whispered threat. I even accidentally left my phone in the living room one evening, where Madison was on a hushed call. Later, when I checked the recording, my stomach knotted. She was talking to someone about, "When Evelyn's gone, the money moves to us." Step 3. Create the stage. Carla and I planned it carefully. A family dinner, one Madison couldn't resist attending. Richard, Ethan, Madison, and me. All at one table. Hidden mics would capture every word. Cameras would be disguised as picture frames. And I'd give Madison the one thing she couldn't resist, a chance to gloat. I rehearsed my lines, steadying my nerves. I wasn't just Evelyn, the betrayed wife anymore. I was the hunter, finally turning on the predator. But deep down, I knew one thing for certain. This dinner could either save us all or destroy me forever. The night of the dinner, I felt like I was walking into a battlefield. The dining room was glowing with candlelight, the kind of warm, perfect setting Madison loved to orchestrate. She thrived on appearances, on looking like the perfect daughter-in-law. Richard sat at the head of the table, swirling his wine lazily, while Ethan scrolled on his phone, oblivious to the storm brewing. Madison sat across from me, her smile as sharp as glass. "Cheers to family," she said, lifting her glass. Her eyes locked onto mine, daring me to flinch. I lifted my glass too, steady despite the pounding in my chest. Smile. Play your part. The hidden mics were on. The cameras disguised as picture frames were recording. Detective Ruiz was parked 2 streets away, waiting for my signal. The first half of dinner was almost normal. Madison played the perfect hostess, complimenting Ethan's new project, laughing softly at Richard's old stories. To anyone else, we looked like a happy family. But then, as dessert was served, she leaned closer. Her voice lowered, dripping with venom only I could hear. "You know, Evelyn," she whispered, "it won't be long now. Ethan will be mine completely. And you? You'll just be a memory." My fork froze midair. My heart hammered. This was it. This was the moment. I leaned forward, my own voice calm, steady. "Funny, because I've already seen what you're planning. The accounts, the calls, the lies. I know everything, Madison." Her smile faltered, just for a second. "You don't have proof." I felt the recording device in my pocket still running. You sure about that? I said. She blinked, realization dawning. Then, her mask cracked. Oh, Evelyn, you really think you can stop me? Richard can't resist me. Ethan won't listen to you. And when you're gone, all of this, she gestured around the room, becomes mine. The words were sharp, reckless, and exactly what I needed. I pressed the tiny button on my phone, sending the signal to Carla outside. Within minutes, the door burst open. Detective Ruiz and 2 officers stepped in, their voices firm. Madison Carter, you're under arrest. Ethan's face went pale, his fork clattering to the table. Richard sputtered in shock. And Madison, for the first time since I'd met her, lost her composure completely. No, she screamed, thrashing as the cuffs clicked around her wrists. You don't understand. This was supposed to be mine. He was supposed to be mine. I sat back in my chair, trembling but victorious. For once, the predator wasn't in control, and as they dragged her away, she twisted her head to glare at me, her voice venomous even through her tears. This isn't over, Evelyn. Not by a long shot. My blood ran cold, because something in her eyes told me she meant it. The house was quiet after the chaos. The glow of the candles flickered against the walls, but the warmth had been replaced with something heavy, something broken. Ethan sat at the table, head in his hands. His voice was cracked when he finally spoke. Mom, how long did you know? I looked at him, my heart aching. Long enough, but I couldn't tell you until I had proof. You wouldn't have believed me. His silence was answer enough. A mother never wants to see her child crushed by betrayal. Richard wouldn't even look at me. He poured himself another glass of wine, staring at the red liquid as though it could wash away his guilt. He muttered something under his breath, maybe an apology, maybe a denial. I didn't care anymore. The police cars had left. Madison was gone, but her shadow lingered in every corner of that room. I replayed her final words in